Hello and a good evening to everybody. Here Thursday, 8 o'clock, Flower Hour episode, is it 12 or 13 now? I think it's 13. But yeah, I'm excited because today I have on Jess Oslo, student medical doctor. We're going to be talking about issues within healthcare, the medical field, her experience of being a doctor, a student doctor, just to make sure. So I'm pretty much looking forward to that. So I'll wait for everyone to just trickle in. We're going to be discussing the inequalities and just so much more. These are the kind of conversations that we need to have. So yeah, send it through to your friends, send it through to everyone. So yeah, I'm just looking forward to this. And I hope everyone's just doing well today and ready to receive the information, most importantly. That's going to be something that's key. Let me get my tea. Yes, got some alkaline tea, most importantly.
Hey,
Cheers.
cheers. I have my bottle of water.
I have some alkaline herbs, I've got to try and stay alkaline somewhat. How are you doing?
I'm good. I've got like a few notes, just like ready to chat, just so I know my stuff before I go into this.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I'm excited.
It's been a long time. I think the last time was years ago, right?
Yeah, it was like I think it's like 2 years ago. We went bowling, right? With friends.
I didn't go bowling.
You came
to the
after.
meal.
Yeah.
I came to the meal, so it was quite good. And since then, I've seen the good stuff that you've been doing. So it's just important for us to have this conversation. I know you speak out a lot about race in the medical field and so much more.
Yeah.
So yeah,
talk a lot.
I'll let you introduce yourself to the audience, my audience, your audience. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm Jessica. I'm a medical student at King's College London. I'm halfway through my degree now, so I've still got a few more years till I'm a qualified doctor. But yeah, and I just like very passionate about widening participation, widening access to further education and medicine in particular, and health inequalities as well. So things in our healthcare system or areas in our healthcare system that are failing and disproportionately affecting people of different ethnicities, backgrounds, and so forth, and how we can make sure that they don't continue to happen.
Absolutely. And I think my first question has to be, why the medical field? You could have gone into absolutely probably anything else. Why the medical field of all fields?
I think for all medical students, it kind of stems from, you like science at school. It was one of the lessons that I was genuinely excited to go to. I wanted to learn about science. I felt like it related a lot to our world, and I could link it to my day-to-day living. And then obviously, you get the grades and you're thinking, okay, well, science is my thing. Science and maths are my thing. There are so many degrees within that. Where do I go from here? And I think a really nice thing about medicine, in particular, is getting that work experience. So at first I wanted to be a vet. I got vet experience and I just hated it. Like, operations on animals was just not for me. I felt like I was missing that disconnect. I mean, I can't have an animal as a client. It's just not going to work. So I was like, let me try this on humans. And I went to do work experience at a hospital and a hospice. So I got to see when conditions could be treated and when they couldn't. And I just loved that I got to find out about people's stories, talk to them, educate people on health as well. I think a lot of people go into medicine thinking as a doctor, you just diagnose, treat, when really you're educating people who may otherwise not really care too much about their health, to make better decisions in life, because ultimately that's what's going to ensure that you live a good, healthy life. So I like that part as well. And my work experience was a big decider in that. And I thought it's a career that is challenging, and I love a challenge. If I end up doing it, on my graduation, I've got my outfit planned. I know I'm so ready for that day if I actually manage to get there. And it's lifelong learning as well. Like, you never stop learning. And you're always humbled. You think you know so much. You think you've got to the top of your field, and then there's new research or there's a new patient and you just have no clue where to start. And you're always drawing from your colleagues and your peers, and learning more. So I really love that part of the degree as well. And you always get to teach others. Yeah.
Okay. So you started off, you wanted to be a vet. You realized that you couldn't have that connection with animals. So I predict you're not a vegan by that stance. And then, so you saw that you could deal with humans more, better connection. And have there ever been moments where you've doubted that the medical field, especially with humans, is the one for you, I suppose?
Definitely. I think not only when you get to medical school, because I took a gap year, so the first time round I actually was unsuccessful in all of my applications to medicine, and I think it dented my confidence a lot. I had the grades, but it's just so much more than that. There's a lot of hurdles to jump through, hurdles to jump over, or hoops to jump through, and it dented my confidence. I thought that maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I'm not smart enough. Maybe I'm not good enough for medicine. I worked in an NHS hospital actually as a healthcare assistant, and I saw how hard it actually was to be part of the staff and not just a work experience student kind of looking from the outside in. And a lot of these doubts started coming through. So when I started medical school, I thought, you know, can I see myself working in the NHS? And I'll be quite frank, slaving away day after day, burning myself out for the sake of people's health, or just being a good Samaritan all the time. And that's definitely made me doubt the career sometimes, and if I'm good enough and able to like be strong enough to get through it. But I think motivation, and definitely being around like-minded people who also give you that motivation when you don't have it, is really, really important.
And how do you, because I know you do a lot, so could you explain to the viewers the amount of things that you do and how you're trying to widen the medical field and make it more accessible to everyone and increase participation?
Yeah, sure. So throughout my time at medical school, I realized how hard it was for me to get in. So obviously in 2016, I was unsuccessful in my applications to medical school. So I took a gap year, worked as a healthcare assistant, saved up money, took experience abroad, and spent a lot of money on expensive interview courses and all of this sort of stuff. And I just thought, if you are from a poorer socioeconomic background, this is just not viable. So ever since then, I've been like a champion for widening participation, making sure that I'm going into schools for students as young as year 7 to just get them thinking about higher education and letting them know that this is for you. You know, we look the same. You can do it. It's for you. It's not just for the people that you think it's for. So I'm a student ambassador at my uni, and I focus on student success and social mobility. And I've also been the president of African Caribbean Medical Society, which is a society that was set up by Black medical students to support aspiring Black students getting into medicine, increasing representation, and also supporting those of us already there. The amazing thing is a lot of more Black students are getting into medicine. It's a lot more comfortable for Black students. People are feeling a bit less isolated, but the fact of the matter is there are systemic issues and things stacked against us. And even me, I'm very aware that I'm mixed race, so I'm not even experiencing the true extent of how these barriers are being put up to these students. So I was the president of that society. We ran a conference focusing on breast cancer in Black women, and I'll talk more about like why the outcomes for those women are less. And we do an outreach scheme. So we went, like I mentioned before, to students as young as year 7 and onwards to get them thinking about higher education and medicine in particular. And I've recently started my website. So
okay. Plug yourself.
Yeah, so I'm mentoring students for free, especially those from non-selective state schools who've been attending these schools since age 11. And just reviewing personal statements for free and trying to do my little bit to help students who literally have no one else to turn to, like much like I did when I was applying. First one in my family and only student in my 6th form. It's a lot, and you just don't really know what to do. So just being that support system for people to reach out to. Yeah.
Okay, so you've got your website. In 2016, you were rejected. You've been a student mentor. You're the head of the ACS for medical students. So you've got all of these achievements. Where do you find the time to be Jess outside of the medical field?
The work-life balance is a sticky one, because everybody thinks that you got to have this like perfect balance. When no perfect balance actually exists, it's always you're going to have to adjust it depending on different things. So there are definitely times, especially throughout this year, where I was overwhelmed. I had to delegate tasks and definitely prioritize my work instead of my extracurricular, which is great when you have a team behind you and when you have friends who can take on those responsibilities, and also empowering people to actually take more of responsibility for their roles in a team. But I definitely always make sure that I give myself time to relax, because at the end of the day, our mental health and our well-being matters most. If you're not healthy and well, you cannot do all these other things and all these other responsibilities you have and commitments you have. So weekends I usually block off for like me time, seeing friends, seeing loved ones, and just kind of planning out my days. I don't like to wake up at like, I don't like to wake up in a day and think, oh yeah, what am I going to do today? Just do nothing, like fart around, like what am I going to do? So I like to plan my days out. I love to use calendars, that sort of thing, but weekends are always my chill time where I can kind of do what I want, and also in evenings just to like wind down and stuff.
So finding that work-life balance and then your personal balance is just as important for your mental health, and I think it's a very good point. Not many people realize that. So we're going to get a little bit deeper, and my first question to you that I wrote down is going to be, when we're thinking of the current COVID pandemic, it affected the Black community. We say that viruses don't discriminate, but it did. And I want to ask you, what do you believe the reasons were behind this?
I personally think that the COVID outcomes, just in case anybody's not aware, so my understanding of it was, because I glanced over, it was a long report, it was about like over 80 pages long, but essentially during the pandemic, Black males were 4 times more likely to die than Asian males, for example, and any other Black person. And the Black or Black British ethnic group had the highest mortality, the age standardized, so depending on age, removing age, had the highest mortality per 100,000 people. And again, 95% of doctors who died in the first month of COVID were Black.
Yeah.
And I just think this comes down to, we cannot ignore it, systemic racism, and also the fact that that's ingrained so deeply in so many systems in our country. Education, Black boys are 3 times more likely to be excluded than any other student at school. In our justice system, where we again know that Black men are more likely to be arrested or stopped and searched, and our healthcare system is not exempt either. And I think these doctors were put on the front line without protection. We have a lot of BAME doctors working in poor conditions, A&Es, not getting the shift requests that they wanted, and also not being consultants. So another statistic that I found is that the ethnicity pay gap is, let's say, relatively small, 1 to 2%, which is still not good enough for junior doctors and around that pay grade. But as soon as you get to consultant level, which is when you're a doctor who is top of their specialty for their field, let's say, white consultants make about £5,000 more than a Black or an Asian consultant, any BME consultant. That is really concerning. And we start to think as well about the numbers there. There are not many BME consultants. When you look at the doctors in the hospital, Black doctors are hitting a glass ceiling. And the fact that consultants get to work on weekends and have this more flexible work shift meant that all the Black doctors who were not reaching those consultant levels could not say, I can't come into work, could not say, I'm going to take this day off. They were forced to be put on the front line without the right protection. So I feel like that contributed to death. And it just wasn't good enough. In terms of the community and society in general, it's about accessibility. Black people this is more anecdotal evidence, so people from stories that I've heard, stories that I've read online, that, you know, Black people are not taken seriously, that they have higher thresholds for pain, like absolutely ridiculous assumptions that our medical professionals are making, and this unconscious bias is really affecting the way that we give healthcare to these people. And COVID-19 highlighted this really, really badly, and I think our government should be ashamed, and I think they are.
I think you made so many points that relate to the racism that we have in our society. We know that, for example, Black people are more likely to be bus drivers, more likely to work in retail jobs, more likely to work in customer-facing roles or people-facing roles. And it goes on to ask, I think when we think about decolonizing, we think about decolonizing education, we think about defunding the police, but where's this idea of decolonizing the healthcare system? So when we think about the medical experiments, you've got the experiments in America with the Tuskegee. You've got so many other experiments with the
Yeah.
human zoos in Belgium and even in London, the way that gynecology was founded. And when we think about it, do you not believe that there needs to be a decolonization of the healthcare system in order to allow people from a BAME background the freedom and perhaps the opportunities that are present? And why I say that is because I remember Trevor Phillips once said that, used to use the term glass stealing, and he used the term snow capping, literally because it's white, the pyramid is all the way down. So yeah, that's my question to you. Do you believe that we need to decolonize the healthcare system and the medical field?
Absolutely. I'm in my 3rd year now, and I remember this year I was particularly annoyed because I had a bit of dermatology, which is skin, learning about the skin, and I was in I'm placed in a South London hospital, Brixton to be exact. I'm at King's College Hospital. That's where I'm placed for my placements. I'm getting a lecture by a white junior doctor on skin conditions, and not one picture was black. We are in South London. We're in Brixton. And you know what? Full stop, we're in London, okay? Majority of the people here that we're serving in our community are black. How can you not show me eczema on a black person? And also the fact that it's eczema black, that's all you need to type on Google. I'm tired of us being an afterthought, and I think that we really need to be, as black medical students, speaking up about these things, raising concerns, providing feedback, saying you need to include these images in this curriculum. One of my friends, actually, his name's Malone. I'm pretty sure like everybody's heard about him by now.
Yeah,
with
St. George's.
Mind the Gap. Get him on here. He'll be amazing.
Listen, I've been trying to reach that guy and I can't. I think I found his Twitter, so you got to plug me.
Get him
on here and have that conversation.
Definitely, I'll send you his Instagram. But he's like created an amazing initiative that all of us have just been waiting for, and not had the opportunity to do so, or the contacts where, you know, for once during BLM, the tragic death of George Floyd, people were listening. People were more hypervigilant to racism than ever before. White people were listening. They were posting the black squares. They wanted to educate themselves and find out more. It was great. And it was a time for us to start shouting, look, if you want to listen, this is what we've been telling you. And I think it's great that he's made this book called Mind the Gap. And he's, it's not come out yet, but it is in the process. And that's going to show all of these different conditions on black skin, and just what we've been waiting for. And that's even a step into decolonizing the medical curriculum. It doesn't have to be like, you know, protests and stuff. It just needs to be not making black people an afterthought. We have all these cultural competence lessons where we learn about different cultures, and we get given, you know, these vignettes where we get patients of, you know, LGBT backgrounds or black, Asian, and we kind of do role play on how to deal with them. But it needs to be more than that.
Absolutely.
Like, these patients are real, and we're not getting taught about conditions that affect them in the right way, and it's leading to death. So yeah, I think we definitely need to decolonize the medical curriculum, and black students are doing amazing so far. Absolutely. And I'll plug you the Instagrams.
Yeah, I need to have him on, because I've been trying to reach him for such a long time. And Francesca asked, how was gynecology founded? From what I understand, that they experimented on a black African woman. They did all sorts of obscene things to her via sex, via instruments and so on. But perhaps you could answer that more than I could.
I've read about this, but not in that much detail.
It was in the medical experiment. I think the book is called The Medical Experiment.
Yeah, I haven't read the book, but I definitely saw an Instagram post about this, and how it was founded. Was it founded in the US?
I believe so, if I'm correct. And they made her travel all over the world, where doctors used to come and experiment on her. They used to do, as Deji said, no anesthetic and so much more. And you made a point where you said that there's this idea that black skin, number one, is thicker. Black people don't bleed red blood, or, for example, we don't have we have a higher threshold to pain. So we've both agreed that the medical field needs decolonizing. And can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just typing.
Okay,
I think James Marion Sims, I just searched it up. He was the surgeon who experimented, I think.
Oh, perfect.
It was on slaves.
Yes, and there was, I wrote about this. I'll have to send you the article. I think you definitely enjoy reading it. And I want to ask you about something as well. Has there been a time in the medical field where you've experienced overt or covert racism? In
this respect, I'm glad to say that not in medical school, but as a healthcare assistant, I had a particular patient. He was a white old man, and he was obviously he was very, let's just say, agitated. He had Parkinson's, so they uncontrollably shake, and he called me a black bitch when I'm trying to help. What do you like? Do you want me to give you water? Blah 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 blah. And he just said, "Go away, you black bitch." That to me has been the only overt racism that I've experienced. Other things are a bit more implicit. So, for example, if I turn up in a hospital, if I'm not wearing my lanyard, are you a student nurse? Are you a student midwife? Not that that's any issue, but when I'm a medical student or saying I'm a doctor, it's like it's a bit, they don't get it or they're confused. And I actually do see in terms of nursing and HCA level, black people are in abundance, you know. But as you get more, like, say you're a doctor, you're a medical student, you're met with a bit of shock, or like, are you lost, kind of thing. But yeah, that was the only experience where I've had overt racism. Nothing was done. An incident report wasn't done. And I was 18 at the time, so didn't follow it up. But now I would, definitely.
And that's interesting, because it seems as if these experiences have made you run more towards the medical field so other people don't go through it. And that reminds me of a time when I used to ask my mum. So my mum was a head of a ward at Queen Mary's Hospital. And I used to beg my mum for all the stories. And I remember I overheard her tell one of my aunties a story where she said, so she walks down the wards, and one of the patient's mothers, a patient's mother, asked for the head nurse in charge, walked straight past my mum, asked a white nurse, and the white nurse points straight back at my mum. And the shock on their face apparently was unreal. And my mum said she experienced that her whole career. So as you said, it's always, there's this presumption that perhaps black people are of a lower position within the medical field and so much more. Is there any obstacles that you feel that you will face as you try to move towards the top of your profession and when you do qualify as a doctor?
I think there's definitely barriers, and I'm very aware of them. But I think for any black student out there, especially if you're a woman, you cannot let it frighten you or demotivate you. So I know, you know, for example, I'm very interested in becoming a surgeon, doing surgery. I'm not sure which type yet. I'm interested in obstetrics and gynecology, which is a very women dominated profession. So I would experience less abrasion there. But I'm also interested in things like orthopedics, where it's a very male dominated profession, or plastic surgery. And sexism is just as rife as racism in medicine. That's for sure. And things will be said to you. I've heard that there are illegal questions that get asked you at interviews, such as, when do you plan to have kids? Are you planning to take maternity leave? I mean, that's not any of your business. Would you ask a man that? And I think the medical profession is getting a lot more female. It's a 60-40 divide, I think, at the moment. And I've heard older male professors and medics saying, oh gosh, like, the medical profession is doomed. I've read articles online where it's doomed because there's too many women and they're all taking maternity leave and they're just going to cripple the service. And, you know, we should have a specific quota of female to male so they're not going to take up space and just leave when they get pregnant. And it's just like, that's already a barrier. And then you're black as well, where, again, we're seeing this very alarming discrepancy between black consultants and black people at every other level. It's getting into those consultant positions when we're just as qualified to do so. And not just consultancies, sitting on the board of NHS trusts, making the big decisions of all these puppet masters pulling strings. You'll see in these boards, and it's been a trend actually, you know, makeup lines, show us who's on your executive board. Hospitals, trusts, show us who's on your executive board, and there's very rarely a black face. Very rarely. And I think those are the barriers that we need to really, really be pushing through. And I think that's why it's so nice to see that black students today, we're very much thinking in this mindset of letting the ladder down. So when we get into these positions, you may be the only black person in parliament, you may be the only black person in this executive board, but it's very important that you then become, unfortunately, a beacon for others and inspire
Absolutely.
the same and provide a way in. I think that's really important, and I think it's just what we have to do.
And I think that leads me on to ask you another question. Just how important do you think representation of black doctors or anyone black within the medical field is? Just how important is that? I think why I ask that question is it's a question we hear often, but I just want to hear your personal opinion, I suppose, on why you believe it's so important.
I think it's so, I honestly think it's so important because when I've worked with a lot of students that say from the ages of like 11 to 18. So in that secondary school period where you're very impressionable, you're easily influenced, you want to be, you seek approval, you want to be liked by your peers, and you obviously want to do well, and you know, you're starting your life. And a lot of the students I work with are shocked, like, you don't look like you do medicine, you don't seem like you do medicine, you can't, it just doesn't make sense. You should have braces, glasses, and be reading books all the time. That apparently so. And once they only need to see it once, where they're like, oh, do you know what? They were pretty cool. Yeah, they were pretty cool. They look like me. I want to do that. And even just speaking to students about more than what they're thinking. So I spoke to a girl. She was very intent on being a midwife and I asked her why, and she was like, oh, I wanna help deliver babies. I wanna get involved in helping mums deliver babies. And I said, well, do you know you could be a doctor and actually do operations on women and help them deliver the babies and get involved in surgery and maybe even do research? And she was like doctors do that? And I was like, yeah, there's types of doctors that are specialized in delivering babies. Be a midwife, or you, like, by all means, but consider all of these other fields that you could also delve into. And I think it's important that as people who are black, who obviously relate to these students by just being black, it's important for us to let them know that even though there are barriers, there are things that will be stacked up against you, you can do it. And I think it's amazing as well to signpost them to people like Stormzy, who are giving out scholarships.
Yes,
sorts of things.
Absolutely.
To help these students get into places where they deserve to be.
Absolutely. And going on from childbirth and delivering babies, you said yourself you want to move into something that's very female dominated. And I read a statistic that black women have a higher mortality rate in childbirth, even though there's no evidence that they are more likely to suffer from complications. Black women are 71% more likely to suffer from cervical cancer-related deaths and 243% more likely to die of complications in pregnancy and childbirth. Just how alarming are those statistics?
Yeah, so I knew that black women had a higher mortality than white women in general. And then I saw the MBR race statistics that black women were 5 times 200% more likely to die than white women during childbirth and from complications. And it honestly broke my heart because this is not developing countries. These statistics are not from places with lack of services, lack of staff. These are from developed countries like the UK and the US. And to be quite frankly, it's disgusting where these statistics really stem from. So black women not being taken seriously, again, for pain, or, you know, delays with epidural, or just an avoidance of black women in general because they're aggressive or their partners are aggressive, and let's just like kind of leave them alone. It's not good enough. And someone commented it's based on the dismissal of pain, and loads of black moms have been saying this for years and nobody is or was listening. Yeah, and it's just not good enough anymore. And that's why I think it's really important to have people from like black women in obs and gynae, black women looking after these women, and black midwives to actually know, you know, I'm an advocate for you, I relate to you, and I'm gonna make sure that you get the care that you need. And also educating our white and non-black peers on just these women and talking to these patients. It's so, we also wait longer for consultants to come down and see us. It's a systemic issue, and I think I know I talk a lot about, you know, the onus is on black people, but it's actually on non-black people as well. I think we can't do it without them. They need to really get a grip, to be honest, and get educated. And it's that unconscious bias that is really difficult to tackle, because if you don't recognize it, you don't bother to delve deeper into it. And I think these are the kind of sessions we need to be having. What thoughts do you have of Black people? Why do you have these thoughts? And just
You're openly critical. You're vocal. You hold nothing back. You criticize the medical field. Not many people would be as brave to criticize the medical field. And I want to ask you, has there ever been a time that you were told to keep quiet?
Actually, no, but maybe because I'm a medical student and I'm not seen as a threat yet. But I do have friends who are doctors and a lot more into their careers who've been told by other consultants, and actually really hurtfully Black consultants, to be like, oh, don't post that about BLM, don't be too political. And I'm tired of this rhetoric that medicine's apolitical, because it just simply isn't.
Absolutely not.
Everything about
Absolutely.
Like, how do you think it's funded? You know, it's not like rainbows and unicorns and we're good Samaritans doing this for charity. Doctors get paid, midwives get paid, nurses get paid. There's systemic racism running, it's rife in the NHS. There's bullying and harassment going on, a lot more commonly to Black people. And I think the more we keep doing this hush hush thing, or don't post that, or don't look like that, just be apolitical and just not involved, it's getting us nowhere. The NHS has been like this for years now. It's only getting highlighted now, but it's always been bad. It's just getting worse. And I think if we just keep going into these systems where we're just going to be content with staying in a system that's literally crippling, or jumping ship, then it will never get better, and Black people will die as a result. And I just think that's not something that I'm prepared to sit by and let happen, and a lot of other Black students aren't either.
And I think a lot of people would have been disheartened and disinterested simply by, first of all, the statistics, second of all, by the experience. And as I said before, it's pushed you closer towards the medical field. And you said that there's been times where you've had people say things to you. But then what advice would you give to other student medical doctors, and perhaps even doctors in general, who don't want to speak about what's happening and perhaps just want to keep their career nice and safe?
It was a big quote going around that, you know, if you're silent, you're complicit. You know, you're part of the problem. And I don't like to point fingers at you. You're part of the problem. Having a nice, dandy career is great, but you're doing it at the expense of people's lives. And as a doctor, I think that's very contradictive. It's contradicting. You're there to save lives. You're there to be an advocate for patients. You're there to care about patients. And to say that you just want to focus on your career and keep quiet and, you know, just go on like things aren't normal, turn a blind eye, you are leading to the death of others, no matter how indirect or far removed you think you are. That's what that is doing. And I think, don't be afraid. If we don't speak out and make it the norm, it's always going to be a hush hush you. And I'm a person who loves to talk about taboo issues. Let's get to grips. Let's talk about it, you know. And it's happening right in front of our eyes. If you don't talk about it, it's never going to get solved. It's never going to be. You're not going to have things like Mind the Gap, that book that's come out of this, or you're not going to have students thinking, all these student unions being like, you know, we now want to support Black students. We now want to give you guys funding. We now want to, you know, get you involved. If we don't talk about it, if we don't shout, if we don't scream, these things don't happen. And I think it's a gift. It's like a vehicle for change. Discussion is a vehicle for change.
Absolutely. I just want to say to everyone that's watching, because everyone's really engaged, if they've got questions for Jess, throw the questions, because we're more than happy to ask them. More than happy, because people have said quite a lot so far. And we were speaking about breast cancer, if I'm correct, Jess, right? You said you were mentioning something about breast cancer. Would you like to go more into it? And someone just asked, what's this live about? So I'm speaking to Jess about her experiences of being a Black medical student, medical doctor, her experiences in the medical field, and the inequalities within the medical field and healthcare in general for people of color.
Let me type that for him or her.
Ideally, I should have typed it, but I try not to get distracted when I type.
Oh gosh, I can't pin it. I don't think. Maybe you can.
Yeah, all right,
the JAMA one.
All right,
I will read that book. Medical Apartheid. It's a great read. I will definitely read that book. And thank you, if you're talking about me, breath of fresh air. You're a breath of fresh air. Thank you for sharing your experiences.
Shout outs to Deca. That's Deca right there. You and Deca would really, really get along. Deca's one of the most vocal women I've ever met.
I love it. We need it. Yeah, so breast cancer is another one. And also, if you're Black and you're watching this and you're thinking, gosh, is there, like, you know, is there anything that doesn't disproportionately affect us? These things will be changed. They are in the process of changing, but I also think, you know, it's good for us to be aware of them. If we're aware of them, actually, we can do a lot within our communities, which is when I'll speak about now. So, as the president of African Caribbean Medical Society, one of the things I wanted to do was spread awareness of health inequalities, and that was one of my goals. And I got in contact with a doctor. Her name's Dr. Georgette Oni. She's a oncoplastic surgeon, meaning that she's a plastic surgeon for those recovering from breast cancer. So she does like mastectomies, which is removal of the breast, and just aesthetic procedures to make women feel more confident as well. And we decided to do a conference on breast cancer, and she actually brought to me the statistics and the idea of, like, I didn't know at all that Black women were more likely to suffer from it. It's not something that I've come across in medical school so far. The overall mortality for breast cancer in the UK has decreased. And this is because of like greater emphasis on early detection, screening, better treatments. I mean, cancer overall, we're a lot more on the ball with it now. It's a hot topic. We all know about it. But recently, UK cancer registry data showing that breast cancer incidence rates in the UK among Black African and Black Caribbean women are like going up compared to their white counterparts. So although the incidence rate is decreasing for this particular group, it's actually rising, and they're more likely to be diagnosed with more aggressive forms. So there's a form called triple negative breast cancer, and they're getting more diagnosed with this as well. So it's important that we know about the genetics behind that too, because we're taught about BRCA1, BRCA2. I don't know if anybody's medically inclined here, but that's very much found in like Jewish ancestry. But we need to look at the genes with Black women as well. And it's also been found that a higher proportion of Black women especially in London, do not go to screening. They don't take up their invites, whereas white women, it takes one invite, they go. I don't know if it's the way the invite is written, if it's not culturally appropriate, if it's not reaching Black women. I'll talk more about what Black women actually had to say when they came to this event, but these invites are not getting taken up by women in Black communities, and it's really important that we figure out why. So we ran this event in Brixton, at the hospital that I'm placed at, and it was targeted at BAME women. So white women were free to come, any non-Black women were free to come, but it was targeted at Black women. It was called Let's Talk About Black Women and Breast Cancer. And we asked them to fill out a survey before and after the event. We asked them, what myths do you want addressed? And Black women were not, they didn't know that they were more affected, which I wasn't surprised at, because I didn't know. They wanted to know if there were alternative therapies, so natural remedies and things like that. They wanted to know if it was the food that we were eating. They wanted to know if wearing bras at night was causing them breast cancer, or putting on deodorant is spray or roll on better. Had myths and legends from all over the gaff. Like, it was wild. And we kind of tackled them at this event and asked the women after how they thought the event was, what they think can be done to improve breast cancer awareness. And some of the really interesting things that came out was having Black women in advertisements, you know, breast cancer campaigns. We have this pink ribbon, it's always on white women, something that I never even noticed. I never even thought it just goes over your head. But as a Black woman who's probably suffering from breast cancer or in the recovery of, looking at a campaign that's never featuring you, you feel very far removed from the condition. Of course, you won't think it affects you. Or saying that they want more events like this where they can talk to other Black women in the field and get their opinions on it and get their advice on it because they feel more comfortable. All of these sorts of things came out, and we're hopefully going to publish that sort of data to make sure that it's out there for everyone to read, to encourage more interventions like that to continue. But that was just one of the events we had, and we got over £5,000 in sponsorship. We had over 100 attendees, and we really reached Black women from all over the country. And I really want to do more things like that. So I'm currently the co-president of Obstetrics and Gynecology Society at King's this year, and I definitely want to do maternal mortality for Black women and get those Black mothers in, speak about their experiences, and encourage students and doctors to come and listen to these women's stories on a stage for everybody to see, and really get people's opinions on why this is happening and delving really deep into it as well.
And I want to ask you, so that you made the points you've made, they cannot be denied, I believe, in any way, shape or form. And my question that I was just typing as I wanted to ask you, with perhaps you said that most black women don't come to their screenings. With white women, they're more likely to come. You think about the pink ribbon with, you know, and so on and so on. It's only white faces compared to black faces. So I want to ask you, there's a distrust within the healthcare and the medical field. Why do you believe those reasons are with black women? Sorry to make it specific.
Do you know, I think, like, you hear about all of these disproportionately, all of these conditions disproportionately affecting you. You then go to doctors and GP services, and your experiences define how you interact with these services. I have sat in on work experience or even placements as a medical student, and I've not been happy with the way the doctor's interacting with people. I mean, being dismissive, you might be having a bad day, but being dismissive is an experience that will stay with that patient forever. You
Absolutely.
hear people saying that doctor is so shit compared to that doctor was really good. You either, these two sorts of experiences will stay with you forever. And I think, you know, doctors, that's where doctors are going wrong. It's so much more than this though. I get it. Doctors are burnt out, things are happening, but sometimes it's also unconscious bias. And I think we need to kind of not beat around the bush and sugarcoat it. I witnessed a GP not taking a black woman and her black child seriously because he had a rash and he couldn't see it. And I was just like, oh, can I look? You know, taking a bit more interest, being like, oh, really? Why do you think that? Medical students, please question your GPs, your doctors. If they're like, oh, I don't see it, I'm just going to give her a cream. Why don't you see it? Or why are you deciding to give her a cream? Why are you deciding not to do anything? And I think this is a thing that I've seen lots of black doctors sharing as well, especially when it comes to maternal mortality. If a doctor refuses to give you pain relief, if a doctor refuses to do something, please can you document that? Make sure you're doing that, because we're doing these things. Some doctors are doing this for no reason, and it's unconscious bias. That's the reason, and they don't realize it. We're not recognizing. We're not speaking about it. So yeah, I think prior experiences of healthcare really affect how you interact with healthcare, and it's so sad because I know you remember those bad experiences. You know, you went to A&E and you were told to go home, or you went to the GP and they were just like, you're wasting my time. They made you feel like you were wasting their time. One thing I'm really, really passionate about is mental health as well.
Absolutely.
Black men. So I'm one of the managing directors for events for the BME in Psychology and Psychiatry Network, founded by Keisha York. She's one of my good friends, also someone you should get on here.
Shout out. Bring her on. Bring her on. I'll have it.
She focuses on getting black people into psychology and psychiatry because we need more black people in these professions. Black men are more likely to be sectioned, more likely to be given like very much given like schizophrenic diagnoses and things like this, and not given the support to deal with these diagnoses. So and they have had, honestly, I went to we did an event addressing men's mental health, and at this event I organized all the logistics and stuff, but when I was actually sitting and watching the event, the experience they have had with healthcare have honestly been despicable, shameful, and it shaped how they deal with their own diagnosis of mental health and how they then interact with services in the future. And mental health is one of those things where you need to be having constant interactions with healthcare. You need to be staying in the loop. You need to be seeing your psychiatrist or your counselor. And if you had one bad experience, you will never turn up again. And that's why they have poor outcomes, and we shouldn't be letting that happen. So yeah, I think it comes from experience. It comes from hearing family and friends' experiences, and you lose faith in the medical system. And I know how nice it is when black patients see you as a black person, or just somebody who looks like them, and they're just like,
yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I've been in orthopedic. I went to this orthopedic clinic. I just kind of turned up there, and he was a young black guy, 17 years old, had a broken wrist, wanted to show off a little bit, like, yeah, do you want to see it? I mean, I was taking it. I was like, oh, yeah, show me the x-ray. Yeah, what can you see? And blah, blah, blah. But just seeing somebody who's like them, who's kind of cool, you know, it makes them feel comfortable, and it makes sure their faith is restored in the system. And honestly, it's something very small, like smiling or saying, yeah, you know?
I think Akala called it the complexities of the black nod.
Yes, yeah, I love
it. Yeah, it's those very small things, and you reminded me of an experience when I was younger that I had pneumonia, but because my mum's a nurse, she knew there was something wrong. When I
Mm.
went to the GP was like, "Oh, it's fine. It's just a cold." And then one night I couldn't really breathe that much at all. And my mum called the ambulance, got there. A black doctor saw to me. And I remember my mum said to me when the black doctor showed my mum was it the X-ray? I think it was
Yeah, of the
of my
chest.
of my
Yeah.
chest. My chest was blocked up. She said if my mother wasn't a nurse and didn't spot those things that the GP didn't notice, I would have probably been dead. And that went on even further. That when I was on the bed and I had a cannula in me, I was in so much pain, and the nurses didn't really take it seriously. My mum, as a black mother, had to chase them up and to tell them, my son's in pain. My mum really fought my corner. And I think I'm really thankful for my mother, first of all, being a nurse.
Mm.
And it's because of individuals like yourself, my mother's temperament in terms of you're an advocate, you're not taking it. I'm alive today to even have this conversation. So the work you're doing and the things you're speaking about, they're so important, more than you could honestly ever imagine. And I want to ask you, when you think about the future and the health outcomes for the Black community, are you in a positive place? Do you believe it's going to get better, or is your hope starting to dwindle down, unfortunately?
Well, somebody says someone who is human, and I totally agree. Dan Mark, who said that, that's so true. I just think we need to be taking everybody's. If someone tells me they're in pain, I don't care who they are. I'm not going to write that off until I have a reason to write it off. Do you know what I mean? I think every medical student, doctor, GP needs to get out of whatever, systems they've been trained to do or autopilot they're on, and really kind of switch back into focus and focus on the person in front of them. But in terms of your question, I'm an optimist, and I truly do believe at the rate that I'm seeing more and more Black students getting into medicine, we're having African Caribbean medical societies across the UK. I'm seeing, Black doctors in the US doing their thing. I'm seeing Black doctors UK, Black female doctors UK. Shout out you guys, you featured me. We're taking over. We're visible. Representation is mattering, and it's encouraging other students to then go into it. It's kind of like a domino effect, and I think it just has to get better. I don't see it getting any worse. I just see that the fact that it's been brought to light, more Black doctors are entering the profession. As long as we keep advocating for our community, speaking up about these things and making sure that we're adamant that they cannot go on, and that there will be consequences for these things, I do see health for Black people getting better. However, there are obviously things that are out of our hands, like funding. The funding in Chelsea is not the same as the funding in Brixton. That's
Absolutely
the way life is, and that disproportionately affects Black people. Like I said, it seeps into other industry sectors as well, like education, justice, housing, employment. Black people are more likely to be found in deprived areas. These are things that unfortunately stem from so much stuff, government, businesses and things like that. But honestly, it's a shame that it's happened, but obviously George Floyd was martyred out of this whole process. And I think, and I hope, companies, healthcare, education look into themselves and think about, where are we going wrong? Do we need to start teaching Black history? Yes, you damn do, because it's more than slavery. Do we need to start thinking, why are we racially profiling Black men who are out and about at Tesco in a tracksuit? Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think those, like, a lot of reflection needs to happen. Even Black people in government, like, guys, you PPEs, you people doing politics, law, we need y'all, okay, to get there. We will see better outcomes for Black people in a variety of areas in society, hopefully.
And when we think about the outcomes for the community in respect to how we interact with the medical field and healthcare and so much more, you spoke very briefly on mental health, and you said, for example, men are, I think if I read a statistic, men are more likely to die under the age of 35 due to mental health reasons. And we're more likely to interact with mental health services, but we're less likely to be treated and so much more. What do you think about the current mental health? So some people would say it's a pandemic at the moment as well. So how do you feel about that?
I think that the poor funding of mental health services in this country is so shameful and sad to see. So CALMS, which is the Child and Adult Mental Health Service, is very severely underfunded. I've spoken to young people who mental health disproportionately affects, waiting up to 6 months to see a counsellor. You know, that's just not realistic. Or it's got to the point of suicide attempts to be admitted to a hospital. And I think, yes, it is a pandemic in itself. And this, like, quarantine has amplified these sorts of issues for people who are more isolated. Social media as well. I think with George Floyd's death, for Black people in particular, we held actually a racial trauma and wellbeing event as part of the BME and Psych organisation I'm part of, and people reflected on their experiences, how they felt, and how they think they were all mental health professionals, so how they felt themselves and how they hope to help others. And we kind of spoke about the tools and the coping mechanisms that we would advise to others and how we're coping ourselves. But I think funding, unfortunately, we need funding to actually function, and that needs to be better. And men in general, in terms of mental health, when it gets into adulthood, tend to self-medicate, so they tend to turn to drugs and alcohol to alleviate mental health issues, whereas women tend to actually speak about it or go to see the doctor, like, significantly more than men. And I think with men, where we're missing it, like you said as well, they are happy to go, but that first experience means everything, and the attrition rate is high. They don't come back, or went for 2 sessions, a new psychiatrist or psychologist came in. You can't rebuild that relationship again. You've shared things with somebody that there shouldn't be this high turnover of staff. Clinical iceberg, exactly. And it's a so much deeper issue. And I think for men, we definitely need to be focusing on them as a priority as well in terms of mental health. Black men in particular, raising awareness, having role models that people who have gone through these things and speaking about it, because I'm very much a person who believes in you being visible. If you've had a journey, if you've had an experience, you can inspire others to keep going or try again. That's what I did with medicine. I know, like, the men who came to that mental health event, I know so many of them who have now gone on to do rap, who've gone on to express themselves and talk about how the ordeal they went through, basically, and it's inspired other Black men to do the same. And then will be a domino effect for Black students at school, or Black boys who are in that, you know, or boys in general who are in that teenage phase where they're cool and nothing hurts them and they're going to be footballers. And, you know, we need to be getting these things early.
And I think I was going to ask you, how do we improve the outcomes for men? But I suppose you've slightly touched on that. But then my next question to you in a similar vein would be, how do we improve the outcomes for Black women at present when we're going through so much? And, you know, as we spoke about before, there's a distrust of everything. So how do we improve those outcomes for Black women? And how do you see us actioning those outcomes?
These are such hard questions.
Well,
you're really like, you're really testing me. Okay, make me think. I think in terms of like outcomes for Black women in maternal mortality, or do you just mean in general?
In general, and however you want it to apply. However you want it to apply.
Listening to us, period. I was gonna literally say that. What we can do, especially because I'm only a student, I'm not a doctor, which means I have power, but obviously not as much as a doctor, for example. I also will at loads of doctors who are doing amazing things, like the Clinic Diaries, Dr. Danso, amplifying Black women voices, amplifying Black patient voices. In medical school, although it's great, we get loads of patient exposure and things like that. Ask medical students how many times they actually listen. We're also in medical school, and even when we're medical professionals, we're forced to reflect. We're given these little diaries. We need to write about a patient that, you know, changed our mindset and did this. Take away the assessment part of that and actually reflect on what certain patients have told you, because there are certain stories that I will never forget that patients have told me, that I've heard on podcasts. I mean, we have, you know, the internet now. I've heard on podcasts, I've heard on, you know, YouTube, of experiences of patients, and thought, I'm not going to make that mistake. I'm going to listen if a Black woman tells me that. I'm going to listen if a Black man tells me that. And I think we need to amplify Black patient voices so much more. actually not even black, not even just black, but anybody of a ethnic minority who are not the norm in the UK. Because at the end of the day, if a majority of our NHS staff are white and they're serving the diverse population, let's say London, because I'm going to speak about, because that's where I am, you need to listen to the people who are having the lived experience, because as a white person, you're just not going to understand their lived experience. But what you can do is you can listen and try and know and make a note to yourself, oh, I'm not going to make that same mistake. I'm not going to ignore if a black woman tells me she's in pain, especially if she's she's pregnant. So yeah, amplifying black patient voices, starting societies. I think as students and even doctors can create like special interest groups and organizations. We've got like Black Doctors UK, Modern Day Medics, Melanin Medics. Students and doctors have so much more power than they think they do. And I think, having these societies where you're catering to your community, bringing patients in, doing public health events for these patients and these black people in the community are really important. Engaging them in health where other people just don't give them that chance to engage. A lot of doctors will tell you, oh, you have diabetes. Do you know what this is? Yeah, okay. You have that one GP consultation. I mean, who's engaging you further in health? Who's giving you the leaflets? Who's giving you the information? Do you know what social media accounts to follow that show black people who've gone through the same lived experiences? I think we need to be making that more of an option for people in our community, to be honest, to improve outcomes as well.
I have zero doubt that you're not going to go on to be one of the best doctors, and I think I'll trust my health and I'll put it in your hands, and I think a lot of people watching this would. And because we've got 4 minutes left, Jess, I want to ask, what does the future hold for you as an upcoming doctor, and how can we support you, I suppose, as well as a black doctor or student going to be doctor?
What's upcoming for me? I'm hoping to be a surgeon, not sure what type. And I have had a massive reflection during the quarantine period where do I want to work for the NHS? Do I see myself doing it? Should I go abroad? Should I seek a better life for myself? I think I've been very intent on the NHS is a sinking ship, I'm going to go. But I know myself and I know it goes against everything that I stand for. So I feel like I'm going to stick it out. So you might catch me. I'm going to stick it out for a couple of years for sure, but I definitely want to get a more global outlook on health. So I hope to do a bit of traveling because I love to do that. Get published a bit more. So I love research. I love bringing to light health inequalities, as we've been talking about. And I love surgery and surgical innovation as well. So you taking advantage of the technology that we have available to us to make medicine and surgery so much more personalized. So how can we import data from our fitness trackers, our Apple Watches, and actually look at how to make medicine so much more personalized, taking into account race, ethnicity, culture, the food that you're eating, everything to make medicine truly efficient and personalized for patients. So I hope to do some more research into that. And just look at more. So I'm actually in the process of doing my breast cancer publication with my final year medical students who helped me run that breast cancer event, and also publishing about vitamin B12 status and folate for why vitamin B12 levels are actually higher in black people compared to other ethnicities. So just kind of doing a lot of research, getting it out there, making black people aware of conditions that affect them. I think a lot of the time, all these journal publications are just available to people who go to uni, but what about the people they're actually affecting in society? We need to make these things open access. And yeah, hopefully being a surgeon, I'll let you know what type. And yeah, just amplifying one another's voices. I really want to get involved in, if there's any people here who've been patients who want to tell me their experiences or want to ever talk, I'm always here. I think these Instagram lives are amazing. I'll definitely be happy to do more of these. But yeah, I think I've talked enough.
So much sense and truth. You've spoken so much sense and truth to power, and we're going to have a part 2 because you're only going to go on to continue to do amazing things. I genuinely believe I speak for a lot of people that have watched this. You've inspired people and you're only aspiring to greatness. And as I said, anything you want me to publish or put on my page, I will happily do that. But I'm really excited for what the future holds for you. And I'm walking away from this conversation having learned so much. So I've got to say thank you, most importantly. And we'll be keeping in contact for sure. The time's so short, but yeah, we'll be definitely doing a part 2.
Do I come back on or later?
If we come back on now, I'm gonna have to redo it again.
No. It's all good.
But yeah, we'll keep in contact, Jess. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Definitely. Have a great evening.
Bye. You too. Bye.
Bye.